The air in the grand ballroom was thick with a calculated hum of ambition and polite chatter, a symphony designed to mask the desperate undercurrents of Bryony Thorne's failing empire. I stood quietly behind the polished mahogany bar, a pristine white napkin draped over my arm, meticulously polishing a crystal flute. My uniform was simple, unassuming, a stark contrast to the glittering array of designer gowns and bespoke suits that swirled around me. This was precisely the point. From my vantage point, I saw Bryony, a vision in emerald green, her features sharp with a triumphant, almost predatory glee. She was holding court, surrounded by a tight cluster of influential figures, their gazes fixed on me, a curious blend of pity and amusement dancing in their eyes. Bryony's voice, an octave too loud for the intimate circle, sliced through the general murmur like a blade. "And you see, darling Ilara," she purred, her smile a cruel caricature of warmth, "this is where true ambition takes you. From our university days, dreaming big, to perfectly polished glasses and impeccable service." Her eyes swept over my uniform, then back to my face, lingering on my name tag before meeting my gaze with a condescending smirk. "Some paths diverge rather dramatically, don't they? It's a shame, really, for someone who always seemed to have a spark, however dim." A ripple of suppressed laughter spread through her audience, a collective nod to her perceived wit. Bryony preened, clearly savoring the moment, believing she had scored a definitive victory, publicly affirming her supposed superiority. She expected me to flinch, to crumble, perhaps even to shed a tear of shame. But I simply met her gaze, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on my lips. My movements remained fluid, unhurried, as I set down the sparkling glass. My posture was straight, my eyes calm, betraying nothing of the intricate web of strategy that had led me to this very bar. They saw a barmaid, perhaps a little too composed for the humiliation she was enduring. They saw a woman trapped. But what they didn't see was the CEO, the investor, the architect of this entire scene, observing them all with detached, clinical precision. Bryony, in her arrogance, had just handed me the microphone, unknowingly setting the stage for a reveal that would shatter her carefully constructed facade and send shockwaves through this very room. The truth was poised, a whisper away from becoming a roar, waiting for the perfect, calculated moment to strike. This moment, this calculated humiliation at Bryony's glittering charity gala, was not an accident. It was the culmination of years of quiet determination, strategic planning, and an unwavering belief in my own path, a path that Bryony had consistently, and quite vocally, dismissed. Our story, or rather, my story, truly began back in our university days. Bryony Thorne was already a queen in her own right, or so she believed. Born into old money, with the venerable Thorne Events Management firm as her birthright, she moved through the campus like a gilded statue, looking down on those she deemed less fortunate, less connected. I, Ilara, was not from her world. My family wasn't wealthy, but we were rich in resilience and a quiet, unyielding drive. I worked multiple part-time jobs to put myself through school, often arriving at lectures exhausted but resolute. Bryony found this amusing, a constant source of material for her barbed jokes. I remember one particular afternoon, we were both in a business strategy seminar. I had presented an innovative concept for a tech-driven hospitality platform, something that seemed futuristic then, but which I knew, deep down, was the future. Bryony had scoffed. "Ilara, dear," she'd said, her voice dripping with mock concern, "you're so focused on these digital fantasies. Real hospitality, darling, is about lineage, gravitas, and the personal touch. You'll be lucky to manage a local diner and still dream of grand hotels." Her words, intended to wound, only fueled my resolve. While she coasted on her family name, I was meticulously building my own. After graduation, Bryony slipped into the cushioned world of Thorne Events, inheriting a legacy she didn't earn. I, on the other hand, embarked on a relentless journey. I worked tirelessly, often 18-hour days, fueled by cheap coffee and an unshakable vision. My initial capital came from savings, small loans, and a belief in a disruptive idea, integrating cutting-edge technology with luxury service to create unparalleled guest experiences. Thus, Horizon Hospitality Innovations was born. It started small, a two-person operation in a cramped shared office, but our unique solutions quickly gained traction. We developed intuitive AI concierge systems, predictive analytics for guest preference, seamless virtual check-ins, and bespoke experience platforms that revolutionized how high-end hotels and exclusive clubs managed their operations and catered to their clientele. While Bryony was struggling to keep Thorn Events afloat, relying on antiquated methods and her rapidly diminishing family name, Horizon Hospitality Innovations was soaring. We secured major contracts with some of the biggest names in the global luxury hospitality sector. My company, my creation, became a quiet force, a testament to innovation and hard work. But the world, or at least Bryony's world, didn't know me. I had deliberately kept a low profile, focusing on growth, not public accolades. My success was my silent weapon, honed in the shadows while Bryony basked in a fading spotlight. Recently, as part of our ongoing market research and a personal quest for deeper insights into the service industry, I decided to go undercover for a few temporary assignments. I wanted to experience the front lines, to truly understand the pain points and opportunities from the ground up. I needed unvarnished truth, not corporate reports. When the opportunity arose to take a temporary barmaid shift at this prestigious gala, hosted by Thorn Events Management, it was too perfect to resist. It was a chance to see Bryony's operation from the inside, to gather invaluable data on service delivery in a high-pressure environment, disguised as just another cog in the machine. What Bryony didn't know, couldn't possibly fathom, was that her struggling firm was desperately seeking a crucial investment to avoid collapse, and the anonymous, highly discerning investor they were trying to impress was me. I wasn't just observing, I was evaluating. And I had no intention of letting her, or her prejudice, stand in the way of my objective. My past with Bryony was merely an inconvenient, yet undeniably piquant, subplot. Stepping into that ballroom as Alara, the temporary barmaid, felt like slipping into a meticulously crafted disguise. The scratchy uniform, the practical shoes, they were my armor, allowing me to move unobserved through the gilded cages of the elite. As I began my shift, my senses were heightened, not by the clatter of ice or the clink of glasses, but by the myriad subtle cues that spoke volumes about the event's organization. I noted the inefficient flow of the service staff, the stressed expressions of the event coordinators, the slightly stale canapés. This wasn't merely a job, it was an immersive audit, a deep dive into the very fabric of Thorn Events Management. Every spilled drink, every delayed tray, every frustrated whisper from a guest was a data point, meticulously logged in my mind. Even before Bryony's dramatic entrance, I could see the cracks in the veneer, the signs of a company struggling to maintain its facade of grandeur. I overheard bits and pieces of hushed conversations, investors grumbling about the high overheads, whispers about Thorn Events being on the brink, and the desperate need for a substantial capital injection. The anonymous high-profile investor was the lifeline everyone was talking about, the last hope for Bryony's company. I allowed myself a small, internal smile. The irony was palpable. Then, she appeared. Bryony, a shimmering emerald comet, swept into my periphery. Her eyes darted across the room, assessing, calculating, searching for the faces that mattered most. And then, her gaze snagged on me. For a moment, a flicker of disbelief crossed her face, quickly replaced by a predatory gleam. I saw the recognition dawn, followed by the dawning of her cruel plan. She approached me slowly, like a cat stalking its prey, a saccharine smile fixed on her lips. "Ilara? Is that truly you?" Her voice was falsely gentle, a performance for the gallery she was already gathering. I merely offered a polite, professional smile, a non-committal hum. My job was to serve, not to engage. This silence, however, was misinterpreted. Bryony, in her arrogance, saw it as confirmation of my supposed defeat, a testament to her own perceived triumph. She began to draw attention to me, subtly at first, then more overtly. She would stand near my bar station, engaging guests in conversation, always finding a way to weave in a disparaging remark about my career choices or my lack of drive in contrast to her own perceived success. Her snide comments, delivered with a forced air of pity, were designed to highlight the vast chasm she believed existed between us. "It's truly inspiring," she would say, gesturing vaguely in my direction while addressing a potential investor, "how some people find contentment in simplicity. Not everyone is built for the challenges of leading a luxury enterprise, after all." She would then pivot, dramatically, to discuss the complexities of her own business, emphasizing the weight of a family legacy. Her words were like carefully placed landmines, each one designed to diminish me, to elevate herself. I processed each barb, each condescending look, not with anger, but with a detached fascination. It was fascinating to observe the human ego at work, so desperate for validation that it would resort to such transparent displays of cruelty. Her attempts to belittle me only served to illuminate her own insecurities, her own desperate need to assert dominance, especially in front of the very people whose money she desperately needed. I remained calm, my expression unreadable, my movements efficient. Every glass I poured, every tray I passed, was done with a quiet dignity, a silent refusal to be what she wanted me to be. Bryony's arrogance swelled, feeding on my apparent passivity. She believed she had me exactly where she wanted me, a prop in her grand narrative of success. She was setting the stage for her biggest performance, unaware that she was merely building the pedestal from which I would deliver the crushing truth. The silence, my silence, was not weakness, it was the quiet before the storm, the methodical tightening of the strings of the very trap she was unknowingly building for herself. The crescendo of Bryony's performance began to build as the night wore on. She had gathered the most influential investors, including representatives from 3 major investment groups, around a secluded lounge area, strategically positioned within earshot of my bar station. Her voice, amplified by confidence and perhaps a glass too many of champagne, rose above the general din. "You see, gentlemen," she announced, sweeping a hand dramatically towards me, "true passion for hospitality isn't just about grand visions. It's about understanding every facet, every role. Even the most humble." Her eyes, glittering with malice, locked onto mine. She then launched into a tirade, a public dissection of what she perceived as my stagnant life. "Elara," she continued, her voice dripping with mock concern, "we were peers, once. I remember your ambitious talk, your grand plans. And now, you're still pouring drinks, just as you did to pay for your tuition all those years ago. It's a stark reminder, isn't it, of how privilege and inherent talent separate the truly successful from, well, from those who are simply content with their station." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, her gaze challenging me to react, to break. "Some people simply lack the drive, the sustained ambition, to climb beyond the mundane. It's a tragic waste of potential, wouldn't you agree?" A few of the investors shifted uncomfortably, sensing the cruelty, but none intervened. Bryony, emboldened by their silence, pressed on, her voice growing sharper, more insistent. "You see, gentlemen, Thorn Events represents heritage, a legacy built on generations of dedication. We don't dabble in fleeting trends or rely on whimsical, untested concepts. We understand the true meaning of luxury, built on tangible assets, not digital fancies." She sneered, a clear dig at my past and my suspected involvement in tech. She thought she was establishing a contrast, showcasing her perceived superiority and the stability of her traditional business model against my failure. My training as a barmaid allowed me to maintain a placid expression, a professional blankness. But internally, a quiet storm was brewing. This was it. The perfect moment. The humiliation had reached its apex, the audience was captive, and Bryony had just inadvertently set up the precise context for my revelation. My hand, steady as a surgeon's, reached for the remote control I had discreetly palmed from my apron pocket. "Excuse me, Ms. Thorne," I said, my voice calm, clear, and utterly devoid of the deference she expected. It cut through the air, catching her mid-sentence. For the first time all night, Bryony's triumphant smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation. I believe you were just discussing the importance of tangible assets and legacy, in contrast to digital fancies and untested concepts. My gaze was unwavering, meeting her startled eyes. Before she could form a retort, I pressed a button on the small remote. On the massive LED screen behind the main stage, which up until then had merely displayed Thorn Events' logo, a dynamic new graphic materialized. It was the sleek, modern logo of Horizon Hospitality Innovations. Below it, in bold, pristine white text, flashed a single name, Alara Thorn, CEO and founder. A collective gasp swept through the room, a wave of stunned silence. Bryony's face drained of all color, her jaw slackening. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, then back to the screen, as if trying to reconcile the image of the barmaid with the formidable title. You see, Miss Thorne, I continued, my voice now carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to commanding boardrooms, not merely serving drinks, while you were busy upholding a legacy that, frankly, appears to be crumbling, I was busy building one. Not with inherited wealth, but with innovation, hard work, and a profound understanding of where luxury hospitality is truly headed. I took a step away from the bar, placing the remote on the counter. My uniform, no longer a disguise, now felt like a deliberate statement. My company, Horizon Hospitality Innovations, specializes in the very digital fancies you disdain, I explained, addressing the bewildered investors directly, my voice resonating with calm confidence. We revolutionize luxury service with cutting-edge technology. And as it happens, your desperately sought-after anonymous high-profile investor for Thorn Events Management is me. The words hung in the air, a hammer blow. Bryony staggered back, a choked sound escaping her lips. The investors, who moments ago had been politely amused by her condescension, now stared at her, then at me, their faces a mixture of shock, dawning comprehension, and a sudden, profound respect. The tables had not just turned, they had been atomized. Bryony, who had so gleefully exposed what she thought was my pathetic reality, was now utterly, spectacularly exposed herself, not as the grand dame she pretended to be, but as a prejudiced, struggling relic, standing before the very person she had publicly humiliated, the person who held her company's entire future in her hands. The silence that followed was deafening, reverberating with the weight of her shattered pride. The aftermath of my revelation was immediate and devastating, akin to a perfectly aimed cannonball hitting a brittle glass structure. Bryony Thorne, who moments ago had stood so tall in her emerald gown, seemed to visibly shrink. Her face, which had been a mask of triumphant malice, contorted into a grotesque display of disbelief, then horror, and finally, a profound, unadulterated shame. She stammered, attempting to form words, but only incoherent sounds escaped her lips. Her eyes darted around the room, desperately seeking an escape or a sympathetic face, but found none. The investors, her crucial audience, now looked at her with a mixture of polite disgust and professional disappointment. One of the investment firm representatives, a stern-faced woman in her 50s who had been chuckling at Bryony's earlier remarks, stepped forward, her voice crisp and no-nonsense. Miss Thorne, she began, her tone chillingly devoid of warmth, we came here tonight to assess a potential investment, not to witness a public display of what can only be described as unprofessionalism and blatant prejudice. Horizon Hospitality Innovations is a company we deeply admire, a genuine leader in its field. To find its CEO, our prospective anonymous investor, subjected to such treatment, it speaks volumes about your firm's management, or lack thereof. Our due diligence has, shall we say, just been completed. She gave Bryony a look of finality, a subtle shake of her head, and then, to my astonishment, turned directly to me. Miss Thorne, she corrected herself, a faint smile touching her lips, or rather, Ms. Alara, if I may. Perhaps we could arrange a meeting at your earliest convenience to discuss a different kind of partnership? The room buzzed with renewed vigor, but this time, the energy was directed entirely towards me. Other investors, their faces now beaming with a newfound admiration, began to approach, offering genuine apologies for not intervening earlier, extending business cards, and expressing their immediate interest in Horizon. The atmosphere, which had been thick with Bryony's condescension, now crackled with respect and opportunity. Bryony, meanwhile, was left standing alone, a pariah in her own carefully curated event. Her closest socialite friends, who had been laughing along with her moments before, now kept a wide berth, their smiles wiped clean, their expressions a testament to the swift and brutal shift in social power. Some whispered, others openly gawked, but all avoided eye contact with her. I watched her, not with glee, but with a quiet sense of detachment. There was no triumph in her downfall for me, only the cold satisfaction of justice. Her own actions, her deep-seated prejudice and insecurity, had been her undoing. The illusion she had carefully constructed, the one where her name and superficial wealth granted her unchallenged superiority, had shattered into a million pieces at her feet. She was exposed, not just to the influential attendees, but to herself, as a woman whose only true asset was a rapidly diminishing legacy and a profound lack of empathy. I did not linger to gloat. My message had been delivered, my data collected, and my business prospects suddenly expanded. I simply nodded politely to the new faces approaching me, a quiet dignity in my posture, leaving Bryony to face the very real, very public consequences of her actions. The fallout was hers, and hers alone. Weeks turned into months, and the ripple effects of that gala night cascaded through the industry. Horizon Hospitality Innovations continued its upward trajectory, now with even more momentum. The very investors who had witnessed Bryony's public meltdown were keen to partner with me, not just because of my company's proven innovation, but because they had seen firsthand the integrity, the calm under pressure, and the strategic mind behind the CEO. We secured several landmark deals, expanding our reach into new markets and solidifying our position as the true disruptor in luxury hospitality. My success wasn't loud or flashy, it was the quiet, undeniable hum of a well-oiled machine, powered by true vision and relentless effort. As for Bryony Thorne and Thorne Events Management, the outcome was predictable, if somewhat swift. The gala had been their last, desperate gamble, and Bryony's behavior had effectively severed the lifeline. The investment never materialized. I heard through the grapevine that Thorne Events, already teetering, finally collapsed under the weight of its debts and antiquated practices. There was no schadenfreude on my part. Her downfall was not my victory, it was merely the natural consequence of her choices, a stark lesson in the enduring power of character over a superficial facade. Bryony's inherited legacy had proven to be a cumbersome burden, one she was ill-equipped to carry without an understanding of genuine value and respect. My own legacy, however, was just beginning, built brick by brick, innovation by innovation. Life settled into a rhythm of continued growth and quiet satisfaction. I still occasionally engaged in undercover research, finding immense value in observing the world from different perspectives, reminding myself that true understanding comes from genuine empathy and a willingness to step outside one's comfort zone. The incident with Bryony served as a powerful reminder of the pitfalls of judgment and the deceptive nature of appearances. Looking back, the entire experience was a masterclass in human nature. It taught me, yet again, that true worth lies not in the labels people assign you, nor in the superficial trappings of wealth or status. It resides in your character, your integrity, your resilience, and your willingness to work for what you believe in. Bryony had judged me by my uniform, by what she perceived as my low station, and in doing so, she had blinded herself to the truth of who I was and the power I wielded. She had forgotten that the quietest person in the room is often the one with the most to say, and that the greatest strength is often found not in loud proclamations, but in silent observation and strategic action. Never underestimate anyone, for the person you dismiss today might just be the one holding the key to your tomorrow. And remember, the most profound revelations often come in the most unexpected packages.